You're listening to the Rogue Patriot podcast. We're taking the word patriot back. Selena, what we got for us today?
So today we are going to talk about police training, what people mean when they say that they want to defund the police, what their training requires, how long they've got to be in it, what their job grants them permissions to do.
Excellent. All right, so starting off, there's some myths here. Now, I'm going to warn you, we're going to go kind of hard on the police today. And, you know, this happens, the more you whine, the more scrutiny you get. And there is a whole hell of a lot of police whining going on today. Mm-hmm. The job sucks. I'll grant them that. I don't want to be a cop, but I'm also not a cop.
I don't want to be a custodian either. That's not my dream job either. So, and it sucks for them.
It does.
So there's a lot of jobs that suck.
Yeah. So we're going to dispel a few myths here. So first, being a police officer is one of the most dangerous jobs you can have. Mm-hmm. No, actually, not by a lot, like a lot.
So what's some of the, if you're in the top 10 most dangerous jobs, what are some that's listed above police?
Yeah. So you would think like to have a more dangerous job than police, you would be like working in a forge. Or like
oil rig,
an oil rig. There you go. No, actually, turns out logging is the number one most dangerous job in the United States.
Well, yeah, I could definitely,
right.
I can see that.
That one makes sense. Okay, number 2, fisheries. So that would be like some deadliest catch kind of stuff, where it's people,
that one makes sense
crab
too.
fishing, whatever.
Yeah.
Definitely makes sense. Number 3, pilots. That's a little scary. That pilot, being a pilot, and this doesn't mean like big commercial pilot necessarily, not like obviously Delta flights aren't going down every other day, but these are people that fly helicopters, bush planes, crop dusting, like all that kind of stuff. They're all of those pilots. That's number 3. Notice there's no police yet. Okay. So number 4, roofing.
I've done roofing before.
Yeah, I have too.
Yeah.
As a redhead in July in the South.
Though. I mean, you've got to have sure footing. You can't be fucking around on a roof.
Yeah, surprisingly more dangerous than being a cop.
Okay.
Number 5, garbage men.
I'm sorry.
I mean, this is where we're at with this conversation in this fucking country right now. We have hundreds of thousands of police officers whining every single day about how hard their job is and about how they have to shoot half the damn people they see because they're so scared. Yeah. Being a garbage man is more dangerous than that job. Okay? Number 6, truck driving.
Okay, that one to defend truck drivers, having known some. I've known cops and I've known truck drivers. Like, I mean,
yeah, me too. They're both very popular jobs.
Yes, but truckers really
they earn
the
that
schedule.
title.
Yeah, the schedule that they have to meet makes them miss out on sleep a lot just to be able to make a paycheck for their family. So they're definitely job. Sleep deprived or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 7, farmers. Number 8. Structural iron and steel workers. Okay. So if before we started this, if you told me that being an iron worker is more dangerous than being a cop, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense because they're swinging around these heavy I-beams, they're welding, they're doing all that kind of stuff. If you told me being a garbage man is more dangerous than being a cop, I'd tell you to shut the fuck up. But what are we doing? Nope, that's where we're at. That's where we're at right now. Number 9, first line supervisors of construction trades and extraction workers. Okay, again, we're working with heavy machinery there. That makes sense. Number 10, landscapers.
Okay, that one I'm not really getting because I've done that before too.
It is more dangerous to cut your fucking grass than it is to be a cop. That's a mischaracterization. It's more dangerous to be a landscaper for a living than to be a cop.
Yeah.
For a living.
Yes.
So where does that leave us? What you're telling me is that police should have the right to shoot and kill me because they don't know what I'm going to do next.
Feel threatened.
Exactly. But the landscaper can't do that, even though his job is statistically more dangerous.
Wow.
That's where we're at in this country. Okay, so now couple that with the fact that we're not partisan on this show, but we will go hard on people that are blindly allegiant to their parties. Okay, the Republican Party is the most pro-police party, and they also think they're the most pro-freedom party.
Yeah, which
right?
is not how that works. If you look at it the way they talk about communist countries, socialist countries, the way that they defend that is their government having more power to have a militia force in charge over them. Right.
And what they're framing that as too is that it is more free to have a cop kill you because he doesn't know what you're going to do next than it is to have your government take a larger percentage of your taxes, a larger percentage of your income for taxes.
Yes.
That's what they're selling you right now.
Yeah.
That is the most ridiculous shit. Do I want more taxes coming out of my check? No, I don't. But you know what? If it's between that or living, I'll take that.
I don't even think it's just the or living. It depends on what you're taking the taxes for and what they're actually being used for. A lot of people confuse the terms socialist and communism. And you can look at a country that has these laws in place to take more taxes out of paychecks, but they've actually got other beneficial programs in place to that your taxes go to. It's not going to the military. It's not going to the government. It's not going to their little projects they're working on. It's not going to fund the police more money. It's actually going for healthcare benefits, education benefits. These are all things that benefit their citizens, but yet America is supposedly the great country looking after its citizens that are supposedly free, but yet we work 40-hour weeks. And that's going to be a whole nother video that we do, or rather podcast that we do, because that is just ludicrous how much people say that we're free and everything, and how much better off we are than a socialist or communist country when they obviously don't know the definitions to separate them anyway.
Yeah, that for sure. We'll have many different discussions around that topic.
Yeah. So with you saying what the 10 most dangerous jobs are, I'm curious on the on a daily basis what cops do. Are you going to say that a cop goes around and does drug bust and has to track down criminal lords for 90% of their day,
right,
and only handing out speeding tickets 10% of their day? Or would you say they're handing out speeding tickets and pulling people over for busted taillights and a tag light being out and not wearing a seatbelt? I am not saying that these are not people breaking the law. Obviously, you're breaking the law if you're going, 90 in a 55 mile an hour zone, or if your tag light's out, or obviously these things are set in place for a reason. But I'm not seeing Armageddon in that. I'm not seeing a life-threatening. Yeah. So what percentage of their job, or just a guesstimate, what percentage of their job is just handing out tickets compared to these, every day I put on the badge, I'm risking my life.
I'm on the front lines.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's not fantastic data on this that's widely available. So we can answer that question sort of in the inverse. Now, it is important to note that what we are talking about when we say police officers in these kinds of conversations is the same thing that everybody is talking about in the media when they say that. There are highly trained units that are technically part of a police force that are kind of separate from this conversation, because SWAT teams are not the cops that are causing all of these issues in our societies.
Definitely not.
And highly trained drug enforcement officers are not causing these problems. These problems are coming from your rank and file uniformed officers.
Yeah.
They're on the lowest on the totem pole, basically. They're the ones, there's the most of them out of the percentage. There's more of them than anybody else. And they're also the ones causing significantly more problems.
And definitely
than
the ones
else.
more out on the street needing to prove something.
Right.
I've met a lot of cops. I've known a lot of cops, and I've known people in different positions in law enforcement, and the The lowest ranking ones are the ones with the biggest attitude trying to get out there and prove something.
Right, which is true in a lot of different professions as well.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how it goes. It's somebody's job though to make sure that doesn't involve or that doesn't result in killing a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
But so the data that we do have regarding what police are doing most of the time, I think the what I found that was the most enlightening was that on average, under 2% of the 911 calls the officers respond to have to do with anything violent. So that would be anything from murder to
Domestic
rape,
violence,
domestic. It's all of that, everything, assault, battery is under 2% of what they're being called for on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. Okay, so are they going to tell us, is there anybody gathering statistics on, well, they're writing tickets 60% of the time? Not that I could find. It might exist, but I couldn't really find that. But I don't think that number is as important as the less than 2% number.
Yeah.
Because what does that tell you? Well, one, it tells you that, number one, their job is not being on the front lines. We're at war. That's not what it is. Obviously, it's less than 2%. Hell, at my job, I'm in the bathroom taking a shit less than 2% of the time when I'm at work, but I'm not a professional shit taker in my daily job. Okay, so that's the scale that we're talking about this on. But what else does it tell you? Well, it tells you that since they're doing so little of that type of work, when that type of work comes around, they are the least trained for it, they're the least used to it, and they are most likely to respond badly to it. Because anything you do 2% of the time, you're not great at. And the problem is, this isn't a, I sign my name 2% of the time, so it's sloppy sometimes. No, this is people dying. And not just aggressors dying, not just possible perpetrators dying. This is innocent people dying too, completely innocent people dying too. And that's something that a lot of people forget about. Cops will shoot somebody, kill somebody, and they'll say, oh, well, that person, they had warrants out. They were bad, this, bad there. Well, you know what? It's not, the cops are not the judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's the soapbox on that one for you. So under 2% of the time they're doing anything, they're responding to violence. And really, we can see that too when school shootings first started becoming more popular. And then it sounds so weird to say it like that.
Yeah.
But when they became a thing kind of in the zeitgeist, in the 90s, the police response, they were running. They were running away from schools and stuff like that. There was no protocol established for this is how you handle these situations. Mm-hmm. We are well past time now that even though it's less than 2% of what they're doing, we need something more established.
Okay. So, yeah, and that brings up a good point on what they're doing with school shootings or any other call that they get involving violence is what's required for their training. If you think about it, comparing it to a SWAT team or the military or anything, these people go, or SEAL, Navy SEALs, whatever, they have to go through extensive training. And it's a period of time. And then in that time, they say what is required in that time period of training, what percentage of it is going to be mental training, physical training, that sort of thing. What are police required to go through?
Right. So this varies a little bit by state. So to be a police officer, you need to have a certification called Peace Officer Standard Training, or Peace Officer Standards and Training Council certification. And I believe that is like a national thing, but each state has their own that's like a little bit different. They all have slightly different requirements on yearly training and what has to be taught in the academies and all that kind of stuff. But in general, there's about 6 months of training from the time that you say, hey, I want to be a police officer. Let me go find an academy to enroll in. Mm-hmm. After about 6 months, assuming that you pass all your classes and all that stuff, you can get a police officer training or a post certificate, assuming you pass the tests and all that. That's about the length of time required. They all have slightly different yearly requirements. I think around 20 hours is typically in general. So 20 hours per year of continued training. 20 hours. So
20 hours to be able to hold a gun
right.
on your hip and have a badge by the
Yeah.
state or even the federal government to back it up that you have a right to use that gun as well. The power, the authority over the citizens, and the weapon to enforce it.
The right to take away your freedom.
Exactly.
That is ultimately what this boils down to. 20 hours a year of continued education will grant you the right to take away somebody's freedom in the most freedom-loving country
so in a
in the
strict
world.
job that gives you that much authority, that much power to take away from the citizens of America, it's significantly less hours to get a certificate for that and to have that right than it is for me to get the degree in my profession, IT, and other people that I've known who've even got their, when you work for a PhD or anything.
You need more training to get a degree in basket weaving than to be a cop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
First line to take away your freedom. So, going hard on the Republicans this one. So, the party of freedom, quote unquote, the grand old party. Let's have as many cops. Cops can do whatever the hell they want. And you see, everybody who hears this that's on that side is going to be like, well, no, I mean, there's certain circumstances and this and blah, blah, blah. No, shut the fuck up. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That is the party narrative, is that back the blue 100,000% of the time. Well, guess what? The blue is who takes away your freedom. Mm-hmm. That is number one in line to do it. Democrats in Congress are like number 15th in line to do that. Yep. Okay? So it's just such a crazy position to be in, to where they need that little training. Now, within that time, there is a weapons test that they have to pass once, and they have like 6 chances to pass it before they fail the course and have to re-enroll in the academy training.
Yeah. And that's not saying 6 times of you doing it that one time. You can train as much as you want in your personal time or anything.
Oh, right.
And you're trained up until that point.
Yeah.
That is just the actual test.
Yes.
That if I fail a test in college, or if I did, let me correct that. If I failed a test in college, I didn't even have a second chance. There was no second chance.
No, there's not. If you're taking, hell, even taking the admissions test to get into medical school or to get into law school, you don't have 6 opportunities to take it.
But
hell,
with the weapon, once. You do.
Yeah, exactly. With your pistol training or your firearms training to be a cop, you can take the final exam 6 times.
And don't even have to score
it.
like 100% on point, I don't think.
No. That's the thing. It's like any other test. There's a threshold for passing. And so they do this. They have to qualify once. They take it once, 6 months. There's your gun. Go out. Go out on the beat. Okay. Also, vehicle training. Cops, periodically have to engage in high-speed pursuits. They have to immobilize other vehicles. They have to use their vehicles as barricades, all that, battering rams, all that kind of stuff. They don't ever go over 40 miles an hour in their vehicle training. Ever.
Well, they're going to be chasing grandmas on the way to,
Yeah, exactly. They're going to go over 90 miles an hour chasing after somebody who ran a stop sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you wonder why. You don't hear about this too much, but you wonder why there are so many at-fault police accidents in their cruisers.
They're not trained.
They're not trained. They're not selected. Look, there's a psych evaluation they go over once to get admitted into the academy. I don't know about you guys, but my psychological health has varied somewhat over my life. I think that's pretty normal. So you might qualify when you're fresh out of high school, and 2 years later, after you're divorced with 2 kids and your bitch of an ex-wife is trying to take you for the measly $40,000 you get a year as a cop, your mentality might be a little bit different. You might not be in that same grounded centered place that you were when you entered the academy at 18.
Well, I think just preparing mentally for anything that you would go through that would put a cop's life in danger, or just the stress. They talk about how much stress it is to be a cop. Okay, fine. I'm for saying it's stressful. What job isn't stressful? But let's say their job is more important than you and I's. Let's are you and mine. Let's look at it that way. Why would they not have required mental training to be able to handle those situations for longer than 6 months alone?
Right. And so that's the thing. They get a morsel of training in all the areas where I think it's probably necessary. They get a little piece of
But a
it.
morsel is not good enough to protect the citizens of America.
It's not good enough. It's not good enough to justify taking somebody's freedom away either. That's the thing. I think that people, for whatever reason in this country, are less sympathetic to the protecting lives thing as the taking away freedom thing. I think we love freedom more than our lives in this country, which is not something I'm entirely uncomfortable with. But
well, if you look at it that way, America was kind of founded with that.
with that mentality, right?
Is
yeah,
that
that's what
freedom
we're doing.
is more important than my specific life, me alone, which is what so many people died for, was
Right.
to have that freedom, risk their own lives. And we still have people today in our military risking their own lives for our freedom, because freedom is not free.
Right, absolutely. And it's insulting to, I think it's insulting to members of the military to have police have so much power with so little training and act so unrestrained so much of the time. But the thing is, I mean, if you're in the special forces in the military, you're going to have like a year's worth of training for a 6-month deployment. I mean, the training is just phenomenal. They have live fire training, all kinds of different situations where they really put you under psychological stress and then evaluate how you act under that stress.
Well, you're always seeing on the movies, which, I mean, obviously the military is nothing like the movies, but you're always seeing where the drill sergeant is yelling in the soldiers' faces,
Right.
trying to get them to snap.
Yes.
It's kind of the same idea, the same concept, but behind their actual training is to see what can make them snap. So that way they're always under that pressure and they know how to handle it. They're trained for that pressure without responding on their personal wants, but without having a response to it, without having an emotional response. And these cops are having emotional responses, whether it's fear, whether it's anger, whether it's hate, whether it's discrimination. It is a personal and emotional response to their lives feeling threatened. And I know a lot of people, well, why would you not have a response to your life being threatened? Again, that goes back to, it's a job like the military. It's someone having authority, someone having power with a weapon to decide someone else's outcome on their freedom and just it.
Yeah, you don't have the same right to defend yourself that individual citizens have, because you are putting yourself at risk.
Yeah,
is what you're doing.
And then you have those people that say, well, you've got like when it comes to Black Lives Matter, like people, what they're fighting for. Well, there's good Black people and there's bad Black people, just like there's good white people and there's bad Black, white people. And then it's the same thing with the police. Well, there's good police on the force and there's bad, but I support the police. We can't help that there's bad ones. Yeah, but the good ones aren't doing anything to stand up against the bad ones that are creating this bad image of their titles, of their position. So if they're not doing that, they're obviously not good cops.
Right, exactly. I mean, if there was somebody at my job that was like stealing money or stealing information or data or something like that, and I knew about it and didn't do anything, then I would be charged as an accomplice.
Exactly.
Or if nothing else, fired for enabling that behavior. I mean, that would not go unchecked. It goes unchecked with police all the time. And I think it's important to note that this is, I think, mostly not an individual cop problem. This is the way we handle policing in America problem.
Yeah.
And a big part of the reason that bad cops have been so enabled over the years is because of the police unions and the way that is handled. So honestly, I think that even if 50-60% of the cops that of like what we were talking about, your normal averaged uniformed police officer, I think if 50-60% of them came out and tried to socially counteract the bad ones, I don't think it would work, because the union structure is so unbelievably dominant. I mean, they took a page out of the mafia's book from like New York City in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where the unions dominate every single point of that job, of how it's administered, how they're hired, how they're fired, how they're disciplined, everything. And you can't do that. I mean, look, if I was my own boss at my job at somebody else's, business, but I was my own boss, I would never vote to fire me. Right? Like, no shit. That's never going to happen. And that's where we're at with these issues in policing. And, this is something that we'll bring up a lot more. We'll have a lot more subjects on, or episodes on, because it's such a complex topic. But bottom line, the takeaway from this one is, one, being a cop is not even close to being one of the most dangerous jobs in the country, obviously, because landscaping, roofing, and farming is more dangerous.
Yeah. Doesn't make you the say all end all either.
Right. Exactly. It does not make you the law, the long arm of the law.
Which they definitely seem to have this idea of.
Yeah. It's funny how being a lawyer takes 7 years and being a cop takes 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Going back to cops and them not having enough training and them just, there's good cops and there's bad cops. What was that quote from Chris Rock where it was?
Yeah. So Chris Rock had this excellent bit, and he was saying that there are some jobs where you just don't get to have bad apples. And his example was, because comedians are the modern philosophers of our time. All right. This is such a great example of that, because Chris Rock is so smart and eloquent. But his example was, look, Delta can't have pilots that like to land most of the time. Mm-hmm. You don't get to be a shitty pilot and fly people around.
And just be like, oh, well, we have bad pilots and we have good pilots.
That's right. Yeah. You don't get to be a surgeon and be like, yeah, most of my patients turn out fine. Some of them, I kind of forget to sew them back right. And it's like, no, you don't get to have that. And here's the difference between some of those, because some pilots crash and some doctors kill people. The difference is the system does not constantly permit and enable that activity the way it does with cops. Cops, like, look, the guy, Daryl Chauvin or Devin Chauvin, whatever the hell his name was, the guy that started all this stuff with George Floyd, who killed him, the dude had 18 brutality complaints. And why was nothing done? Well, it's because the union was in charge of discipline.
The system is set up that way to protect them. And it's to protect people that can take your freedom away at any point.
Yeah, and the Republicans are the worst enablers of that activity, because anybody, and I'm saying Republicans because that has been just such a flag that they have loved to wave during this whole thing.
Well, I mean, honestly, they voted Trump in, and he seems to really have this idea that he uses the police as his own personal military. Like, he does that a lot, but yet they'll look at another country who does that and then talk bad about them. That's the same thing. That's what communist countries do. It's what you're saying that you don't want. You want your freedom, and then you're turning around supporting a president that's using the police force just like that.
Yep, absolutely. And it's a crazy issue. It's crazy times that we're living in, for sure.
So I do have a question. What grants police, what is their rights with their jobs? Like, what training not just what training do police have to go to, but what steps does a cop have to take to, and I wish more people would try to think along this line, just get their brains to actually think instead of following their flipping party at whatever stupid idea they have. But what do cops have to do before they can execute a decision? So when they have someone that they've had a call on or something, and they have to go out and attend to this call, that person not really seeming threatening, but maybe has an attitude or something, reach in their pocket, the cops shoot them. What steps does that person have to do for that cop to have the right to shoot them? Is it, they have to see what they're pulling out first? Or, you have to try tasing them this many times before you have a right to shoot them? What steps do they have to mentally and physically go through before they're like, I can shoot him? Or is it the right of cops just to walk out and be like, I don't feel like dealing with this today, and then just shoot him?
Yeah, this brings up a good point. So it depends on the situation. And obviously, trying to codify this stuff in like law is very difficult because there's an unlimited different number of situations that can happen and ways they can happen. So it's really difficult to do that. But basically, the way it boils down is they have it's like a hierarchy of use of force. And so it is it's a list of things that you're supposed to do to try to get control of a situation before you kill somebody or before you pull your gun.
Okay.
And there's different things in there like assertive commands and then, physical intervention, tasing.
So what you'd think it would be.
Right. But that's not law. That's just department policy. So, I mean, the way that is not enforced in terms of like, you didn't follow this list, so you are then guilty of X. It doesn't work like that. It's hey, please try to follow this or else you might get like a disciplinary, what do they call it? Like a disciplinary file in your jacket or whatever they call it. Which clearly don't do that much because like we just said, that Daryl Chauvin guy had 18 of those.
Yeah.
So, that's how that goes. But it is a little bit different in the sense of like, okay, so I'm driving. At what point can an officer arrest me? That gets a little bit different because so if you're driving and a cop pulls you over, they can't arrest you for just anything that you're doing. So they can't arrest you for a bad taillight, right? That makes sense. They can't arrest you for
I don't know what they can arrest me for because if they can just shoot someone when they're reaching their pocket,
so
I don't know what they can if that's what you're asking me.
So if that is, and this is where I'm glad you said it like that because that is this conversation. So they can't just pull you over for having an outed taillight and say, like, I really hate the color of your shirt, so I'm going to take you to jail for having a taillight out.
Yeah.
But let's say your taillight's out and you're driving and cop's pissed off or you act like an asshole and you're just not nice.
Which, by the way, should not give them the right to try to provoke something or escalate it or take you to jail. People have bad days. People are just assholes.
It should not. And
I'm not saying people should act like assholes.
Right. It's a natural consequence. It shouldn't happen. But look, if you give somebody a hard time, no matter what their job is, they're going to treat you like an asshole. It's just kind of how it is. But anyway, so that happens. And let's say he wants to give you more trouble. What are his options then? Well, he could say that he smells drugs in the car or smells alcohol on you or something like that. And both of those examples, he doesn't need any other confirmation. At that point, he has probable cause to pull you out of the vehicle and search your vehicle. If he says that, and search you. And there's nothing you can do about it. And if you're really lucky and you know what to say, you might be able to get him to call another officer out there or his commanding officer out there who might overrule his decision. You might be able to convince him to get a drug dog out if you don't consent to the search. But you don't have to if he has probable cause. He has probable cause if he says he smells it. So at that point, there's nothing you can do other. You are at his mercy at that point, his or her mercy. Now, this has happened before, but this is a real story. Let's say you're getting out of your car. Well, what's the first thing you have to do to get out of your car? You have to unclick your seatbelt. Well, I'll be damned. If somebody's standing outside your driver window and you are the driver and you reach to unclick your seatbelt, you're reaching somewhere they can't see because it's between you and the center console. And that cop's having a real bad day. He decides to shoot you because he doesn't know what you're doing. He doesn't know what you're going to pull out. That happens. That happens a lot. That has happened multiple times in the past 5 years where a cop has asked somebody to get out of the car. They go to unclick their seatbelt. Cop shoots them, kills them. Or cop asks for their driver's license. They go to get their wallet, shoots them, kills them. That's a classic example that's been around for decades. That has been like a public lore in the black community forever is if you get pulled over, you better damn well have your license out in your hand before he gets to that window, because if you go to get your wallet, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yep.
So those are kind of the options that they have if they want to jam you up. And the problem is, this is why choosing who is a cop is so important, is at some point, no matter what we do to fix policing in this country, at some point it's going to come down to their individual judgment. So the only way to help that be better is to limit the situations that rely on their judgment. So maybe an officer shouldn't be able to pull you out of your car if he thinks he smells weed. Or, not saying that's right, I'm just saying that's an option. Or maybe if a situation, 5 steps before a situation gets violent, cop needs to have another cop out there, like a commanding officer, handling the situation a little bit better. Or we need stronger training, or we need a stronger psych evaluation before they get in. Or there's a million different ways to fix these kinds of problems, but that is all possible. That's all within their rights. And get this, if the cop does all that, he comes up to your window, he asks you to get out, you go to unclick your seatbelt, and he shoots you. He was not obligated to do anything between the moment you start reaching and your hand disappears from his view. There's no like, oh, you should try to tase him first. Oh, you should try to hit him with your billy club next. Oh, no. If you feel your life is threatened, then you can take action to prevent that.
So that is when people say that they would, want to defund the police or anything like that. I think that was a little bit it's taken out of context a lot, because then you have, and again, we're going to go back to the Republicans. You have the Republicans saying, oh, well, if it's midnight and someone's breaking into your house, who are you going to call? Are you going to call the police? Well, guess what? They won't be there. I think, again, that's where people, they're misinterpreting what others are saying anyway. They're not meaning get rid of the police force. There's defunding money-wise, and not providing them with so much money to my opinion, to spend on crap, but also requiring other things of the cops. A lot of protest and a lot of groups that have went out to stand against cops. They're not standing against them to say, oh, let's get rid of the cops. They're standing for more training, more psych evals.
Well, yeah. And this is I think a failure of the Democrats is, for whatever reason, we get in situations like this, and Democrats will frequently bend to the smallest percentage, or the most minority opinion of Democrats and liberals. The Democrat leaders will go towards. So I think there were definitely some people that meant defund the police, abolish them completely, blah, blah, whatever. Which technically that's not a liberal thing. That does not fall under that title. That's an anarchist thing, which is a whole other conversation. But so the problem is in a few cities, and in Minnesota in particular, they did abolish the police force, or they got rid of it or shrank it so radically that you didn't have anybody to call. I think that's already been fixed, but there were a few weeks that were like that. Now, look, when you're an elected leader, it is your job to moderate the most extreme views of the people that are your constituents, and not just jump headfirst into what everybody is screaming at you to do. So, look, is abolishing police force en masse, is that a mainstream opinion at all? No. And anybody who tells you it is lying to you to get you on their side for whatever bullshit they're selling. That is not the case. Do police need to have their budget slashed by like 50%? In a lot of cases, overall, no. I don't think that would benefit anybody, because all that's going to do is lead to less training, and it's going to lead to lower salaries. There's about a bunch of bad outcomes from that.
I don't even think money is part of the issue here.
No, it so isn't, because police forces are funded in all different levels. I mean, the NYPD has way more funding than the the Minneapolis Police Department or the Atlanta Police Department or the freaking Kenosha, Wisconsin Police Department. They all have crazy different levels of funding. The problem is still the same no matter what. So what does that mean, defund the police? Well, it's probably just saying in general, look, we need to figure out a better way of doing this. And they don't need to be funded like the military. And I think it also means we probably should defund their tear gas budget because they like to use it a little too much and they like to shoot people in the face with the tear gas canisters.
Yeah.
So this is an example. The defund the police thing, in my opinion, is an example of some people holding that flag and waving it saying, oh, look at what these people want. They want to take this away. They want to take this away. They want this. And it's just manipulative. It's just to get you on their side. I think that's where we're at on that. And
I think a lot of people don't research what they're thinking people mean anyway.
Exactly.
They're just quick to hop on anything that they can whine and bitch and pitch the biggest fits about.
Yeah.
Especially on social media, be like, this is what I stand for. But that's all they're doing is sitting in their living room posting stuff on social media.
Oh, yeah. By the end of the year, the existence of the coronavirus is going to be blamed on both Donald Trump and on Black Lives Matter and the defund the police movement. All of those things will be true. That it will be blamed on all of those. And God forbid there's an earthquake somewhere because that'll be all their faults too. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But what is absolutely, what you cannot deny is that policing needs to change in this country. And it needs to have a radical change. And if you are the most freedom loving and the most patriot or patriotic of us, if you love this country the most, you should want policing to change the most. Because policing in the way that it's being done right now is fundamentally anti-American at every single level. This is the country of the free. This is not the country of we'll shove a boot in your ass if you don't get out of your car fast enough. It's just insane. So there will be more episodes about this topic in general, of course, as always, since we love to run our mouths, one of us in particular. And there we go. This has been another episode of the Rogue Patriot Podcast. Please contact us at theroguepatriotpodcast@gmail.com with any comments, suggestions, questions, rants, or whatever else. Also, subscribe us on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this. We also post all of these onto YouTube. Please subscribe and like our stuff there. Any final thoughts?
Nope.
Wonderful. Thank you for listening.